I mean, I think most climate change activists, and they're very sincere about reducing carbon emissions, but they are, if you like, watermelons. You know, they conceal their socialist agenda beneath green skins. What you're hearing here from what you're hearing here from Naomi is that she's quite frank, that if we really want to decarbonise the global economy, we need to change the economic structure that has been in place for generations. And she's being intellectually honest. Now, my disagreement with her would be that this is a radical agenda. It's bad politics because it stands virtually no chance of gaining widespread support, not just here in Australia, but around the world, especially in those developing countries that are chugging along the smoky path to prosperity. And I think it's bad economics because, as unfashionable as it is to say so, history shows that capitalism, for all its flaws, is responsible for lifting so many people out of poverty. And if you undermine the capitalist system, you're going to entrench poverty, you're going to hurt malnutrition, preventable diseases, and many people would rightly say that is not just immoral, but wicked.
Naomi, you get to respond to that, and then I want to hear from the other panellists.
Look, you know, there's a reason why climate change denial is so strong on the right side of the political spectrum. I mean, all the polls show this, is that overwhelmingly those who adhere to a worldview which doesn't see a role for government, that believes that the market is always right, that people essentially deserve what they get, people who believe that overwhelmingly deny the reality of climate change, or say it's not such a big deal and they're not concerned about it. And the reason for that is that if the science is true, then their worldview collapses. So thank you for saying I'm intellectually honest. I think that the right needs to be a lot more scientifically honest, because just because the science is inconvenient to your ideology.
The broad cross-section of conservatives, at least in this country, accept the broad science that there is a connection between carbon emissions and warming of the planet. I think there's a general consensus about that. Where they would disagree is about the level of uncertainty. We all sound like pub bores talking about this subject, but it's worth reiterating that the IPCC models that predicted that as the carbon emissions would skyrocket, as they have during the course of the last 20 years, that would coincide with skyrocketing temperatures. Temperatures are going up, but they're going up marginally. They're not in accordance with the model. So this is where the doubt comes about. It's not denial, it's just healthy skepticism.
No, what it is deliberately spreading doubt. And we've just come off the hottest July in record, in the hottest year on record, and the hottest year before that was the year before.
And it's going up very marginally. It's not going up in accordance with the models. But I'll tell you, this is not an isolated view among many distinguished climate scientists.
This is the kind of argument that we're going to be having until our heads are underwater.
Well, look, there are many distinguished... but you're not going to... There are many distinguished climate scientists who would disagree with the prevailing wisdom.
There are three of them.
There's not. Professor...
Can we get a fact check on this?
Professor Richard Lindzen from MIT, Judith Curry from Georgia Tech, William Happer from Princeton, there are many distinguished climate scientists. Now, admittedly, they are a minority, but they take issue with the prevailing wisdom. But look, there's a broader point here, and this gets back to the economic argument. If you decarbonise the economy, you're going to hurt a lot of developing countries. Now, you go to China, you go to India, their political leaders, their priorities are to grow their economy and reduce poverty.
Tom.
And the cheapest way of doing that for the foreseeable future is on the back of carbon-based energy.
Can I ask you just a very brief question, Tom? If you were standing with your family in the middle of a train track and there was a train coming down the way right about to hit you, would you pause to ask if it was economically viable before you jumped off that track? Would you?
That's a good question.